When I accidentally mentioned my salary, my relatives turned into strangers. In the months and years that followed, life assumed a rhythm both familiar and disorienting. The estrangement from my family had become a backdrop to every event, a quiet undercurrent that influenced my decisions, my moods, and even my perceptions of myself. I noticed details I had never observed before, the way my cousins' laughter sometimes carried a forced cadence, the way my aunts and uncles would exchange glances that spoke volumes without words, the subtle shifting of chairs and posture whenever I entered a room. These small movements, once invisible to me, now felt like signals in a code I had never needed to learn. I became attuned to the ways people unconsciously reveal their judgments, how status, wealth, and perception can warp the natural warmth of interaction. In response, I adapted. I moved through social spaces with careful observation, choosing my words deliberately, gauging reactions, maintaining a careful balance between presence and reserve. Even outside my family, I found myself hyper-aware of subtle social dynamics, noticing the hidden layers of expectation and unspoken measurement in friendships, colleagues, and acquaintances. It was exhausting, yet it instilled in me a profound sense of clarity. I understood that people often act without malice, yet their behaviors can carry consequences that ripple silently through relationships. I learned to anticipate these ripples, to navigate interactions with both caution and empathy. My work became a central anchor. I threw myself into projects, not for recognition or reward, but as a sanctuary from the turbulence of personal relationships. The office was a space where merit, skill, and effort mattered more than perception or entitlement. I found solace in the tangible outcomes of labor. Tasks completed, problems solved, progress achieved. These were victories I could measure, unlike the intangible expectations of family. Yet, even in this refuge, the memory of estrangement haunted me. I would catch myself rehearsing hypothetical conversations with relatives, imagining their reactions to successes or failures, wondering if any gesture or word might bridge the growing chasm. These reflections were both painful and instructive. They forced me to confront my assumptions about unconditional love, trust, and belonging. I realized how naive I had been to equate proximity with understanding, blood with loyalty, and shared history with guaranteed affection. My life outside the family sphere became increasingly rich with observation and subtle learning. I cultivated friendships with a newfound intentionality, seeking relationships where mutual respect, honesty, and shared values formed the foundation. In these bonds, I discovered a depth of connection I had rarely experienced before. Conversations were candid, but respectful. Support was offered without expectation, and trust was built gradually, grounded in consistency rather than obligation. I also dedicated time to self-exploration. I revisited interests long abandoned or neglected, reading literature that challenged my perceptions, exploring philosophical questions about morality and human behavior, and reflecting on my own responses to social dynamics. These pursuits offered insight into the intricate mechanisms that govern relationships, both familial and social, and into my own capacity for adaptation and resilience. The emotional landscape of my life was complex. I experienced waves of loneliness, particularly during holidays, birthdays, or gatherings that once held shared significance. The absence of invitations, or the subtle exclusion from conversations, was a reminder of the fragility of conditional bonds. Yet, within this challenge, I found opportunities for growth. I learned to sit with discomfort, to observe without judgment, and to cultivate inner stability independent of external validation. My perception of family transformed gradually. I began to see them not as villains or betrayers, but as humans navigating their own fears, insecurities, and biases. Their behavior, while hurtful, was understandable within the broader context of human nature. This perspective did not erase pain, but it mitigated bitterness and allowed me to approach interactions with measured patience. In parallel, I cultivated a sense of narrative documenting experiences, reflections, and insights in writing. Journaling became both therapy and exploration. I articulated the nuances of betrayal, estrangement, and observation, examining how a single moment, a casual mention of my salary, had catalyzed profound shifts in relational dynamics. Through this process, I gained clarity about the forces at play: envy, expectation, perception, and the subtle, almost imperceptible ways they influence behavior. My understanding of myself deepened as well. I recognized patterns of dependency on approval, tendencies to internalize judgment, and the ways in which prior assumptions had shaped my reactions. Awareness became a tool, allowing me to navigate life with intentionality, to choose where to invest emotional energy, and to discern between authentic connection and conditional interaction. Over time, I also observed a transformation in my own emotional resilience. The initial shock, sadness, and confusion evolved into a calm understanding of boundaries, self-respect, and selective engagement. I learned that disengagement, when necessary, is not defeat, but a strategic act of preservation. I practiced patience in both observation and participation, engaging with my family when required, but without expectation, allowing interactions to exist without imposing meaning beyond the observable. There were moments of revelation and discomfort alike. Observing their behavior, I sometimes glimpsed the latent ambitions, subtle competitiveness, or quiet envy that had always existed, but were now amplified by perception of my salary. Recognizing these patterns reinforced the necessity of careful engagement and the wisdom of measured presence. Simultaneously, I discovered the capacity for gratitude and appreciation in spaces previously taken for granted. Simple moments, shared laughter with friends, quiet walks alone, productive workdays, assumed deeper significance as markers of stability and fulfillment, independent of familial judgment. I also encountered challenges that tested the limits of my resilience. Opportunities arose where family involvement was expected, decisions needed, or contributions anticipated. Navigating these moments required tact, firmness, and emotional intelligence. I had to assert boundaries delicately, yet clearly, balancing civility with self-preservation. Through these trials, my capacity for empathy deepened. I could observe without being consumed, care without surrendering control, and understand motivations without excusing harm. These skills, honed through experience, extended beyond family to social and professional spheres, enhancing both personal and professional relationships. Furthermore, I reflected on the long-term implications of estrangement. It reshaped my perception of loyalty, altered the way I invested in relationships, and cultivated a heightened awareness of human complexity. I realized that unconditional affection is rare, and that meaningful bonds often require discernment, mutual respect, and careful nurturing. The lessons extended beyond my personal life. They informed my professional conduct, interactions with peers, and broader social understanding. I observed that many relationships operate under unspoken calculations, that empathy and integrity are not universally applied, and that awareness is a critical tool for navigating social dynamics successfully. Over years of introspection and experience, I developed a philosophy that guided both thought and action. It emphasized awareness, self-respect, careful observation, and selective engagement. I prioritized authenticity, nurtured relationships that were reciprocal and respectful, and avoided investment in connections that demanded conformity or conditional acceptance. This approach provided both emotional security and freedom, allowing me to live fully within my own standards rather than external expectations. Yet, despite the growth and resilience, I never forgot the moment that triggered this transformation. The casual mention of my salary, the subtle shift in the room, the invisible boundary drawn with silent calculation. That moment remained a reminder of human complexity, the fragility of trust, and the necessity of discernment in personal interactions. It was both a wound and a teacher, shaping my understanding of relationships, perception, and the balance between vulnerability and self-protection. And now, reflecting on years of growth, observation, and internal exploration, I recognize that the experience has yielded invaluable insights. I am more attuned to the subtleties of human behavior, more capable of navigating complexity, and more resilient in the face of relational adversity. I have cultivated a life where authenticity, careful engagement, and inner clarity define my relationships and actions. Estrangement, once a source of pain, has become a lens through which I understand, adapt, and thrive. And in this space of awareness, I find not only peace, but agency. The ability to define my world through deliberate choice, observation, and connection. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to TaleHub for more stories like this.